You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this week's episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am with my guests today. And I know that everyone out there will be excited too, especially people who have been in the industry for a little bit of time and know who the legendary Linda Miles is. First of all, the first of my two guests, welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm thrilled to be part of this.
Well, Linda's had a long history in the dental industry. She started off working within a practice, but then became a dental coach, and she's now in her 60th year for working within the dental industry. And we're also joined by somebody else who has had 4 decades of experience in dental practices, and that is Nancy Crossin. Welcome, Nancy.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I can't tell you how happy and thrilled I am. I grew up going to see Linda Miles present when she would tour out here as a presenter on how to become more successful within the dental practice industry. So first of all, I'll throw to you, Linda, if you can just give us a brief summary of how you came into the industry for those younger dental practice members who aren't aware of who you are.
Well, first of all, I wanted to be a businesswoman. I knew there was not enough money to go to university because I was the third of 4 children, and my parents struggled with lots of, not a lot of income, but wonderful parents in a wonderful town, wonderful schools. But I pretended I didn't want to go to the university because I saw my mom and dad struggle financially. So I was going to set the world on fire. As a businesswoman, had no idea what that would look like, but I wanted to go to work in the bank. And when I graduated high school, I was only 17, so the bank wouldn't touch me until months later when I turned 18. And by then I needed a job for the summer. So my friends said, my parents' friend said, there's a dentist in Bluefield, West Virginia, who's looking for a dental receptionist. And I thought, oh, my Lord, I don't even like to go to the dentist. And could I really work for a dentist? But it was a job, and it was $1 an hour, July the 7th, 1961.
$1 an hour.
I took $1 an hour. So I took that position. And I worked in dentistry, and then when my second child was born, I started working for a sales company. I was my own boss, and I was selling Nutramedics. It's now an Australian company, bought out by the Australian division, and I worked with them from 67 to 72. And my friend Louise was working for a dentist in Miami, an endodontist, and she said, our dental assistant is leaving. We need to have an assistant if you don't come to work. I know you worked in a dental office. And I said, well, not a lot. And if you'll tell him I'm really not that well trained, I'll be glad to come and help you for 2-3 weeks. Well, I went there and I loved it, Julie. And I really didn't know that this would be my lifetime career and profession. And so I worked there, and then he offered me a job in the Homestead office, which is where my husband was stationed in the Air Force. So I took that job in the Homestead office. And then in 1974, we left Miami. My husband went on a remote assignment to Alaska, and I moved back to Virginia, took a job with an endodontist there, worked there 2 years, and then 2 years later, we moved when my husband was reassigned to Fort Lee, Virginia. We moved, and I took a job with the dentist who literally changed my life. He was starting a brand new practice, tiny little office, 750 square feet of space, 3 little treatment rooms, and I was his one and only employee because he had no patients. But he was an excellent dentist and an excellent boss. And I worked there 4 years running his practice. and it grew, and he was doing some magnificent dentistry. He was a great boss. He had all the right communication skills with patients. And I learned so much in those 4 years that he started bragging about me, and all of his buddies had opened these big offices and couldn't afford to pay the overhead. And they hired me to come in on my day off and train their administrative team. And that's what started it. In 1978, I still worked for Dr. Wilson. And then we moved to Virginia Beach in 1980. That was when I started full time. And you don't do what I did, Julie. We tripled our mortgage, and I quit my full time job in the same month.
Wow.
so
Living on the edge.
Had no opportunity to fail, shall we say.
That's
and
right.
That was
it was a wonderful motivation.
And I remember working, my highest paid salary was $12,000 a year in 1979. And I struggled with starting a consulting business, but my real goal was to be on the Hinman Dental meeting in Atlanta, which I had attended as an employee. And I loved going to hear the speakers. And my 10-year goal was to speak at the Hinman. And I was there in 3 years because I was sort of it wasn't well known back in the early 80s to have a dental auxiliary teaching practice management and team development at a dental conference. So when I was on Hinman, all the scouts were there, and I started just getting really, really busy, started hiring people to help me. I was so bogged down with it. And it was my passion to teach other people. And my goal in life has always been to make other people successful. And through that, I have become very successful, thanks to the wonderful dentist I've had an opportunity to work with. And now my greatest thrill of all now is seeing my colleagues, those that I have watched grow up and go from office management to consulting. I started the Speaking Consulting Network when I was about 54, had that for about 14 years, sold it to Lois Banta, who's done a fabulous job. And that was my second love, is teaching. I as I tell my granddaughters, find something you love to do, learn to do it really well, and then go out in the world and teach other people how to love to do what you love to do.
Oh, what a lovely philosophy. What a lovely lesson to teach as well. I think finding what we're passionate about is a question that everyone wants to answer for themselves, but it's about getting out in life and doing different things to be able to discover it. Otherwise, we find, oh, that sounds good. We try to shoehorn our life into this passion. It never quite fits. Nancy, tell us about how you entered into the industry.
Well, I, similarly to Linda, I was Dr. Hill's patient first. So Dr. Hill and Dr. Wilson for Linda are very similar for us. They were our mentors, and he was such a great dentist. And he was my dentist and asked me, while I was numb in the chair, uncomfortable, he'd say, well, how would you feel about this area of work? And how would you feel about this area? I couldn't speak. And so that went on and on for months. And finally, he asked me would I like to work with him. And I had a meeting, and yes, that was the beginning of my dental career. And again, like Linda, I had no idea that this would be my career. I was in my early 20s. I wasn't sure, but it is my passion, and it did end up to be my career because of Dr. Hill. He took me under his wing, and he taught me about integrity. He taught me about excellence and not to settle for less than that. What a lesson that was. Not that I already didn't have a bit of perfectionism about me, but boy, he really took it up to another level. And he healed my mouth. I had a tremendous amount of dentistry done in my mouth. He healed my life and changed the direction of my life as far as the mouth-body connection. And it's big now. It's a very big deal now. And it has been, I guess, since Chris Kamer and Ron Shefdor started AOSH. great organization about the mouth-body connection. But that led me to my passion became helping patients accept the treatment plan that Dr. Hill had suggested, because health is wealth. And that's how it went for me. And that became a passion. And I feel very proud of that. That would be a very big contribution for me in my life. If I look back and say what really was important, it was helping patients to be able to say yes. And because I had such belief in this health and wealth and your mouth-body connection, I would have no problem saying to a patient, Dr. Hill wouldn't, I'd say, I know you want to buy a new car, but I promise you, if you get your mouth healthy, it'll last you a lot longer than however many miles on your car. And they knew I was sincere. So, of course, his acceptance rate was high. I have to say it's all because of him. I supported that. But it's been a great career. And I stayed with him for 20 years. I worked with him for 20 years. His son, Dr. Tim Hill, is still my dentist. So exciting. He carried on Dr. Hill's legacy. And I started going and taking on private clients and working with a large practice in Milford, Connecticut, and as their on-site consultant. And I started writing every single thing down because that's who I am. I'm very detail-oriented. Every protocol, every system. So I've been doing this for years. And I'll take you back 10 years to that. I had all these ebooks about systems, protocols, hiring, marketing. And I did that so that dentists could bridge the gap between hiring a consultant and doing it themselves in a way, even though I was there to help them. But I've always been there. I always wanted to help dentists get to the next level affordably. So when Linda saw this, I've been friends with Linda for years, but when Linda saw this in 2018, she said, Nancy, what you're doing here is the best thing since sliced bread. And she came on board as an advisor. And can you imagine all the Linda Miles fans out there having Linda Miles be your advisor? So this was a good program. When Linda came on board, now it's a program on steroids. So that's how I got from, I missed a lot of things, a lot of years, because it has been 40 years, but that is basically how I got from there to here. And that deep passion is always about helping people. Helping people. And that's what I do. It's what I've always done and what I'll continue to do. That's my story, Julie. I'm sticking to
That's the story in a nutshell, as they say. Well, it is a wealth of experience between the two of you. It's quite extraordinary. And I wanted to ask you a few questions that maybe I'm sure are in a lot of dental practice owners' minds, because it's not just dentists that own practices nowadays. I was the first non-dentist to buy a practice down here in Melbourne, Australia. But now, there's I think within every state, you don't have to be a dentist to actually own a practice. Is the same over there in America as well?
There are a few.
Okay. Only certain states,
but they have to have a dentist on board in order to, like Gary Takis is one, and there's a couple, yeah.
So what we've got in Australia at the moment are a whole bunch of dental university students about to go in for their final exams, and they'll be all, fingers crossed, graduating with flying colours, and next year will be a time that they start their dental career. And Linda, you mentioned just before that there are various stages of a dentist career, especially if they go down the path of ownership. Can you go through what you were mentioning to me before and the particular things that upon reflection they kind of wish they'd known, the kind of advice that you would offer them at each of these stages?
Right. When we were talking earlier, I mentioned that if you have 1,000 recent graduates from dental university, and you have 1,000 mid-career sort of burned out professionals that are tired of, just the stress of management. The clinical side they love. It's the management, the hiring, the onboarding new people, the constant worry about the cash flow. And so if you have 1,000 dentists in each of the three groups, the recent grads, the mid-career, and the golden age dentists who are my age, if you have them all together and say, what was missing for you in your dental professional learning experience, they wouldn't probably say clinical dentistry or making good margins and beautiful crowns and whatever. They would say the management and being a CEO of a company that I didn't sign up to be a manager for. And so this is why I'm so excited about when I met Nancy in one of my top Connecticut practices. I was there to do a workshop about 10 years ago. Nancy knew me because she had attended my courses along with many hundreds of other CE hours of other speakers. And when I saw this, I said, Nancy, this has to be the best thing I have seen in at the time, it was 50 years in dentistry, because it's everything we in-office coaches and consultants left with our practices. But so many times when I was at the airport just bidding my client farewell, it was like the past 2 days were so overwhelming. I had a tendency to have so much information, I fire hosed them with information. And it was like, oh my gosh, Linda, where do we start? To the point that I had to come up with a game plan that I handed to them in an envelope at the airport as they told me goodbye. Don't do anything until you get your 25-page report of, if this were my practice, exactly what I'd work on the first 90 days. After that is up and running, here's what you should tackle. So it was kind of like Nancy's ebooks. It was leaving them with something as a blueprint. And they still were overwhelmed. And I was very guilty of the fire hosing because there was so much information in just a short period of time. So when I saw her DIY, do it yourself, digital, well, it was ebooks. And I said, Nancy, books are wonderful, but the younger generation are all digital. And I must say, Nancy has become not only a close colleague, she has become my IT expert. Whatever I write, I send it to Nancy, and she puts the frosting on the cake. She makes everything better. And that's why we've been a great work team the past 3 years, because we bounce things off of each other, and it keeps me excited about the dentistry I've tried to retire from 10 times.
You haven't done it very successfully, but it just shows what passion is. Passion doesn't retire, does it?
That never retires. Absolutely.
So, Nancy, can you tell us about the journey towards DIY consulting and describe what that process is, what the service, the product that it is?
Sure. I'd love to. I'd also like to go back a moment just to speak about what Linda said about making everything better. We have done that with each other since day one. And it's so exciting. My energy level is high when I'm making something better. And when someone's making me better, I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that. That's so exciting. That's the kind of stuff that excites me. That's what the DIY is, because we wrote with broad strokes. I didn't know what patient communication systems people had, and I didn't know what software they had. I didn't know what someone in Montana was doing, or for that matter, what someone in Australia is doing. We didn't know. We wrote with broad strokes, and the purpose was for customization, so that a practice, a dentist, their team could have their own experience. They could adapt, take what we have as the foundation, because it is the foundation of practice management. This DIY digital dental consulting experience. It is a foundation. And then what we almost allowed it. We said, in your own time, in your own way, do it yourself, although we're providing an awful lot of information. And that's very forgiving, isn't it? Because I certainly have been there when consultants have come in and everything they say is absolutely accurate, great. We need this. But to do it in a month or 2 months, so take your time, select the areas that are most important to you, and each practice knows what that is. And then take your time, bring your team on board, and actually end up editing and customizing every area of the program, but in your own time and in your own way. Everybody's practice philosophy is a bit different. So this is from soup to nuts. It starts with leadership, this program, because there isn't a consultant who would go into any practice that would not discover and help guide the dentist discover what their plan is, what's important to them, what is their why, where would they like to be in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And again, we're very forgiving because we say, jot it down. Actually, Linda says, get a bottle of wine and go through the leadership program, just sort of get some thoughts. And so I like her idea a lot. Just
Nancy, I actually say, get a glass of wine or a bottle of wine, depending on how slowly you write your goals and your philosophy. And Nancy is so complete. It sounds funny, but they even have to write their own obituary. And that is, after you are gone, what do you want your patients, your team, your family, and your community to think about you? What legacy are you leaving? So when she says she's very complete and it's everything, but one thing that Nancy taught all of us about the DIY is I never really thought about it the way it really is. And her program is that the team members may see 5 good ways to answer the telephone. There's not just one good way. And then she allows them as a team, and doctors always in total leadership with accepting what they decide, which one do we want to use consistently? And so it trains, but it also gives them the leeway to make it their own. As she says, there's a lot of great ideas. Pick one, pick 2, but be consistent. So the one thing she taught me is that a team member will only embrace and implement something in which they co-create. So that's what this program is really about, co-creating it as a team with the doctor fully in charge, the owner.
Exactly. A team will support what they co-create. So that discovery one is about the dentist, but we suggest that everyone do that to find out where they're at. I have actually wept when I have read some dentist obituaries. I couldn't believe that they were thinking that deep and really thinking about who they wanted to surround themselves with, what they wanted their colleagues to say, their patients, their team members. So that's the leadership is about. The dentist, the focus, bringing the team on board in discovery too, because that's where they become engaged. They get to give their suggestions and their opinions through an anonymous survey. And then we move into team calibration, cash flow, protocols for the front desk, protocols for the assistants. We have a very excellent in-house marketing program. And it's simple. We make it simple. This is what you need. If you have this many patients, this is the amount we suggest that you spend. And then we give hundreds of marketing ideas. We have checklists, accountabilities, and we have covered almost everything. And that's why one of our colleagues said, you know what? This is the Google of practice management. And I'm like, whoa, okay, well, that is great. Just put your subject in and you're going to get a lot of information.
That's a tremendous thing, Nancy, that DIY dental consulting is the Google of managing a successful dental practice. Because as you said, Linda, there is an enormous amount of information because it's designed to be a journey that starts when you own the practice and ends when you retire from the practice. We never get there. We never get perfect at anything. You ask any dentist, are you perfect at doing crown preparations? No, I'm still learning. I'm still doing further courses and how to do it. Communication's the same. Patient engagement's the same. Self-awareness is the same.
Absolutely, Julie. You hit the nail on the head.
It's a journey. That's the perfect way to say it. And you know what? That's what this program is. It's a journey. And you take it in your own pace, in your own way, with your own team.
And you know what? One of my clients, she's a dear friend now, and she comes to Florida once in the winter, and we get to see each other. But Deanne Blazek, who teaches at the Pankey Institute in Miami, She said, Linda was our coach for over 20 years, coming in every other year. Then we joined her on her Sun Fund seminars in Cancun and on cruises. So we spent a lot of time together, even though I didn't go every year, to refine and touch up, as we'd call it. But she said, Linda was our coach for 20 years, but guess what? Even though she was our coach, I would want DIY in my office because it's as close as my keyboard. I have no idea where that woman is this week. So that's important to always have your consultant right on your keyboard.
Yes, and I think with dental practice management or ownership, they're often hand in hand. You can't predict what's going to come up for you. You can't predict what's going to be happening within the team dynamic. Maybe you're introducing a new piece of equipment. Maybe we've got a pandemic on our hands and we have to maneuver around that. We just can't predict these things. To be able to cherry pick the topics which are relevant to you right now, such as leadership through a pandemic, would be highly useful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I do want to go back to what Linda was saying about the two, what keeps you up at night? I don't know if anyone saw the movie, What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but what's eating at you? And it will be about relationships, team, hiring. It's very costly to find somebody who you believe is right for you and then train them. Hopefully there's onboarding, but in many cases, Julie, we find there is not onboarding. Mm-hmm. And so it's costly and you want to find the right person. And then if that person leaves or something happens, it's devastating. And then the dentist is thinking, oh no, I have to do it all over again. So to have a process, at least finding the person is one area, but then to have a process once you do hire them so that you can train them. And we feel strongly about dental students because they honestly don't know what they're in for when it comes to practice management. They just don't know. It would be our honor to be able to share this with them. They'll be looking at practice management through the eyes of consultants who have been doing this for many, many years, and their eyes will be open. We had one dentist recently who purchased it, and he looked at the leadership, and we were having a special that you would buy leadership and then you would purchase the rest. So he bought the leadership section and immediately he wrote, and he said, I immediately bought the rest of the program because you opened my eyes through the leadership section. He realized that. So it's been our honor, my honor, to be able to work with somebody like Linda because she's my North Star and always has been. And here we are today speaking to you, and it's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you both here. What you mentioned just before about training up team members, quite often if a dentist does recognize, I think I do need a practice manager, then they will put the word out for a practice manager. And a practice manager can do a widely different array of things in different practices. Sometimes there is a dental practice manager and they are the full-time receptionist as well. They also pay the wages and they pay the bills as well. And they've been there for a long, long time. They know how to have a nice cohesive team. And so they are called the practice manager. Then you go to the other end of the spectrum where all they do is the practice management role. They're going through all the financial reporting, the marketing budgets, all the rest of the things in the world, and they're doing everything. And so it's a huge range. And so when you decide, I think I do need a practice manager, quite often you'll be getting somebody who wants to move into that role because it's new to you as well in working with one, or they've had all of their experience at one or two practices and it's more of an experiential role. They may have done a course which gives them the basic framework around human resources and compliance and the rest of it. But what you said before really spoke volumes to me. If you opened up that role of a dental practice manager in your practice and had them move through the DIY dental consulting program, the wealth of knowledge, wisdom that you are tapping into is extraordinary. And this dental practice manager will have proven techniques and strategies that have worked for many, many practices and able to implement them into that practice.
True, Julie, because Nancy was actually an on-site consultant to the doctor that was very, very successful. And they had a practice manager in addition to Nancy, but Nancy did all those peripheral things that the dentist often takes on him or herself. And so for dental practice managers who have the passion, as we three have the passion to help dentists succeed and make it a wonderful patient experience and build a beautiful team that the dentist doesn't have to worry about being all on the same page. But the person that is in that role may not have content, and that's what Nancy's DIY provides them, is the content, and they do it whatever. I believe personally, so many of our consulting friends were a little fearful when they heard about DIY. Oh my gosh, is Linda Miles trying to put us out of business? And the answer is Nancy and I were both in-office coaches and consultants, and that is the very best route for them to take. But here in America, I can assure you that about only 20% invest in office coaching. And I don't know whether it's the fee involved. I don't know whether it's the fear of change. I don't know whether they fear they don't have the right people in place to make this investment. There's various reasons why they don't. Every dentist, every successful athlete needs a coach. And whether you visit quarterly, annually, or every 3 years, you need a coach. And it just keeps things going in the right direction. But as Nancy has said a couple of times, sometimes the coach doesn't fit the doctor's philosophy. They didn't shop well. And that is a huge black eye for our profession of dental consulting, because if they have a bad experience, they certainly aren't going to repeat the process. And so DIY, I think, will actually create a lot of consulting for a lot of practice managers who wish to go to the next level. And for consulting companies like your own, Julie, you're one of the smartest out there. And there are so many in Australia that I've met that are just, top of the line consultants. Kathy Metaxas and I met probably 30 years ago. And she called me from San Diego once. She was there for a conference with Anthony Robbins and her boss and a couple of other people. And she said, "Hi, Linda Miles. Do you remember me? I'm Kathy Metaxas from Perth, Western Australia." And I said, "Red jacket and fancy handwriting." And she laughed and said, "I'm very nearby to you, and I'd like to come for a little visit." And I said, "Oh, really? Where are you?" She said, "San Diego." I said, "You're 3,000 miles away from Virginia Beach, but come on." And she came to visit, and we have been such great friends. And of course, Ruth Port has been such a darling meeting planner that has become a very dear friend. They're like sisters. We call ourselves the Yayas. So I know what's going on through a little bit of talking to them, but you gals in Australia, you've got it together. And I believe that DIY can even enhance and be another tool in your toolbox for the 70% that aren't quite ready, or the recent grads we talked about, or the golden age who want their best three to be their last three.
Oh, beautifully said, and very generous words as well. And I think years ago, dental practice managers weren't common at all, as we know, but it was much more simple to be successful back then as well. Nowadays, we have got so many different types of marketing strategies available, and we do need to utilize these because competition is stronger as well. Although I don't like to say the word competition, but the number of colleagues that are in the industry is far larger than it was years ago as well. The expectations around leadership and what it takes to make a team successful, what team members expect, that's all wildly changing as well. So I think that small number who actually employ external coaches and consultants to come in and help them and help their existing practice managers improve the success of the practice, improve how the team actually interact with one another, improve the connection that the team members develop with their patients. I think that group is going to get ever larger, and to be able to provide that group with the supportive content, the supportive knowledge, the supportive wisdom that DIY dental consulting can offer them, that's an extraordinarily powerful thing. They talk about the 1% differences that make one athlete absolutely blitz the field over another series of athletes, and this could absolutely be the 1% difference.
Oh, I think so too, because there are so many practice managers who have the passion and experience. But as you said, some of them have worked in one practice. Like Nancy and I found a home and we stayed until we had to move. And but yeah, I think it's the answer to a lot of companies that are looking for another tool in their toolbox just to get people started early in their career, or maybe they're having a midlife crisis. And so many in their early 40s are so tired of having all of the management that they were not prepared for. It's just really sad when we meet these doctors. As Nancy said, you actually cry because they're so burned out, and they are wonderful clinicians. They just don't like the other part that's not working.
Yeah.
Nancy, you mentioned the word legacy before, and when you both were speaking about your history and what started you in the industry and what triggered that passion, or what identified that passion within you, was your original boss, that for whatever reason under the sun, how they behaved, what they inspired within you, their legacy is rolled out in what your legacy has now become as well. And when, Linda, you mentioned that one of the steps is for dental practice owners to write their eulogy. And what impact do you want to have on your team? What do you want your team members to be saying about you? The things that you both said about your previous bosses, your first bosses, is glorious. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I've had many wonderful bosses in my past that for different reasons have inspired different elements and have had a direct impact on how I still behave today. I think it's a tremendous question and a tremendous prospect to consider that could be possible in your practice, that you could hire. They may not have the skills right now, but they've got the right character now. You could hire somebody into that dental practice management position and inspire them in such a way that their open mind, that their ability to want to thrive and help the practice thrives. The gap between here and having that kind of team member is just that knowledge base, which they would possibly accumulate after decades. I mean, you both together have had how many decades together?
I think we have 90
years to develop this knowledge.
We have 100 years together, and we started on July 7th, different years, but isn't that amazing? 100 years. We should celebrate, Nancy. This is our 100. This is our centennial year.
There's the champagne, Linda.
Darn. Julie, we forgot it's a different time of day. We could have some. It's in the evening here.
Well, that's right. It depends on the celebration. I am Australian after all. We celebrate all sorts of things.
Oh, that's great.
What I wanted to share, Julie, is we talk about our doctors, Dr. Wilson, Dr. Hill, and being an inspiration. It goes two ways. And I know Linda was exactly like this. I was a sponge. I wanted to learn. I asked questions. Now, it's a lot easier to want to help somebody who's like that, isn't it? So Dr. Hill found his wing. He took me, I was so interested that he wanted to share everything with me. So I do want to say that team members have a responsibility too. If that's what they want, don't go hide in a corner. If, you have to pick the right time, but let your practice administrator, let the dentist know that you'll do anything. You'll go over and above. You want to learn. Possibly this is your lifetime career, especially for the younger people. And I know many dentists who have helped people to grow, to evolve. And that's a very rewarding piece for the dentist.
That's the missing piece in so many businesses. When I talk outside of dentistry to different friends, they'll say, Linda, what you taught should be taught in every business. And I am a firm believer, Julie, that to me, the getting the team on board was probably my forte. And that's why dentists came back year after year and brought their team, because I could say things that they thought I walked on water. But if the boss said it, they were an SOB, And so I learned how to use humor, but get my points across. And it's so simple for me to have motivated, enthusiastic, and, we talk about marketing. The greatest marketing tool any employer can have is your employees talking favorably about you in and out of the practice. And so the 4 words that I use for empowerment: hire them, train them, trust them, and praise them. Those were the 4 things that motivated Nancy and I, because the more responsibility our doctors gave us, the more we knew they trusted us. And half of the things they handed us, we didn't have a clue, but we learned how, didn't we, Nancy? Absolutely. Because we would never want to disappoint our doctor who was believing in us before we knew that anybody in our life believed in us. Our parents did. Yeah,
Linda, I say that all the time. He believed in me more than I believed in myself. To disappoint him, I would never. On Thursday nights, I used to go out disco dancing. And if I didn't get the 8:00 patient, and patients knew me now, if I didn't, they thought I was Nancy Hill. They thought I was his daughter. And so if I didn't get the patient confirmed and it was the 8:00, I would never be able to face him if they canceled. So I'd call them from the disco outside. They'd say, I can't believe you, Nancy. Of course I'll be there. Have a lot of fun. Good night. Enjoy yourself. But the feeling of not wanting to disappoint someone who believed in us that much. Right. Yeah, that was us for sure. Absolutely.
And patients pick up on all this, Nancy. They pick up on the fact that we like working in this facility. And we used to have women say, by the way, if anybody quits their job here, do you think he would hire me? I've never worked in an environment like this before. We made going to the dentist professionally fun. And I passed by 14 to 15 other dental practices, driving to Dr. Wilson's practice from Chester, Virginia, which was a small town south of Richmond. And all my neighbors said, well, can't you find a dentist closer to home? I can, but I can't find one like this, who he absolutely would call a meeting and say, ladies, we need to work on this, this, and this. And I don't have the answers, but I bet tomorrow, collectively, you ladies will have the answer. I never had a boss that thought I was smart until I met my last employer.
Yeah. I tell you, it's amazing when you are a dental practice owner, how many of them out there think it's actually up to them to have all the answers. You don't need to.
I know.
I love that approach. And I certainly want dental practice owners out there to consider going to their teams with the things that keep them awake at night and say, these are my worries. Help me. Let's brainstorm some ideas. Go off and do your own research. Bring it back. Let's keep moving forward. I think that sense of autonomy that both of your bosses gave you really triggered within you this desire to do very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was wise of them. They were wise men. I'm a young girl, and Dr. Hill would say, if we'd have some sort of situation, he'd say, you're the captain of the ship, solve it. I'm like, oh my goodness. And of course, I and other people, I'm never alone in this world. I stand on many people's shoulders, and he would have that kind of trust in me. But to segue on what Linda was saying before, when you have the kind of practice that Linda is speaking about, where team members love it, they don't have a hiring problem. Maybe they've got something going on about COVID, but people are calling your office. You have names on file for people who want to work in the practice. And that's pretty exciting, isn't it, Julie?
Oh, it is absolutely for sure. Absolutely for sure. And I think a couple of the steps that do get missed, we do hire people. Sometimes there's a training program in place, but the trusting somebody else and praising them do get left off the list. And one of my favorite sayings is reward the behavior you want repeated. So don't just think your role is to identify the things that are going wrong, because I think two things happen. Number one, people then become anxious that you're just identifying the things that are going wrong, but all you see are the things that are going wrong. When you shift, take off those glasses and put on the other glasses, the rose-colored glasses, where all you can see is the wonderful things that are going on. You're speaking about that with your team members. It does inspire us all to keep repeating those wonderful things, but keep getting the praise, keep getting better. Look how wonderful this work environment is.
Right, Julie. And I believe one of my favorite phrases is your team member will live up to your expectation of them. And Dr. Wilson gave a lot as far as CE. He took us to meetings and that. He gave a lot, but we knew who the boss was, and he expected a lot from us because he was such a good boss. And I think Dr. Hill probably did too.
Oh, incredible. I want to go back to just say hire, train, trust, and praise. To remember it, it's HTTP.
Oh, I like that. Nice and easy.
I didn't even know that, Nancy.
HTTP. That's the beginning of our, of our URLs. But
that's really fun. And you know what? My very first seminar that took me 4 days to write, of what would I talk for 6.5 hours to dentists about. And I came up with what are the 4 things I was most passionate about. One was communication. One was organization. The third was motivation. And the fourth was the art of appreciation for our doctors, our team, and most of all, our patients. So if you look at the first letter of those 4 words, Julie, COMA, what does it spell? Coma. And that's what the practice is in if you don't have these 4 things.
That is golden. That's golden. I love it.
It was my tacky little first seminar.
It's wonderful. Hope it woke everybody up out of their coma. That's wonderful.
We had fun doing that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Now, when I'm looking at the DIY dental consulting and thinking how it can be applied, it can be done in a couple of ways, I would imagine. So one group is the dental practice managers or the dental practice owners that want shift and change within their organisation, and they just have to have the how-to, how do I do this? But also existing dental practice consultants or people wanting to move into that space, this could be the foundational lessons and content that they use with dental practices that they go into on site doing one-on-one coaching.
Yes,
that's correct.
Because it's the nuts and bolts. And I asked Linda a question 3 years ago, and she said, you know what, Nancy, we'd been together for the week we were in Florida. And she said, that's the best question I've heard all weekend. And I said, Linda, what do consultants do when their proposal is rejected? And the dentist may really like the consultant, want to hire a consultant, but maybe, again, like Linda said, we don't know the reason. It could be monetary. They don't have the right team on board now, whatever it is. And they say no. I said, well, Linda, what do you do? She said, we'd email, we'd phone call. I said, but wouldn't it be great for someone who declined to say, we do have something we can offer you that is very, very affordable. And so now you've kept the relationship going. You've offered them something else. And guess who they're going to call when they need help? And they will most times. They're going to call you. So the relationship isn't broken. You just bonded by offering something else. So again, this was a plan we had to help consultants. So that's another way when you're talking about the variety of people who could use this along with dental students. It's also consultants who have had their proposal declined for whatever reason. It doesn't have to end there. It could just be a beginning.
It's a wonderful thing because it is difficult when you do send out a proposal and you've had that conversation with the practice owner. They're in pains, they've got troubles, they've got challenges in their business. And when they don't go forward with it, one of the disappointing things is, oh my gosh, now this person stays in pain.
Right.
Well, and can you mention the fee, Nancy, of what it is at this current time, which if someone wishes to white label it for the country of Australia and New Zealand, then they would redesign the program to fit, their own needs. But here in the U.S., dentists can get this for less than $2,000. 1995. For what all of us have taught, there's only about 25 things that practice management encompasses. And as you said, Julie, which was so eloquently put, when I started in the early 80s, I was an expert in most everything that was going on. But dentistry has evolved and changed. And now we know that, the hygiene department, that's a specialty. Human resources, that's a specialty. Marketing, that's a specialty. So having resources to refer them to if they need more than the basics. DIY is more or less the basics with a lot of information that they can take at their own speed and pick there's 8 parts to it. And they can take 8 months to do it if they want. They can take a year. They can do it in 8 weeks if they're really gung-ho. But the point is, it fits so many people in dentistry, whether it be an experienced consultant who wants another option, as Nancy said, whether they are practice managers who want to become on-site consultants for that particular doctor, as Nancy was. It's a whole new key role that's coming about called the on-site consultant or the on-site practice manager.
Absolutely. And dentists understand specialties because they refer out. They refer to the orthodontist, to the periodontist. In fact, they love to collaborate. And we have now entered a world, I don't know about Australia, but in the United States, we live in a very litigious society. Linda and I both took on HR in the 80s, but now I'm not an expert in every state. So now that is something we refer. We refer an HR specialist, a great company. And also when somebody purchases this, we offer support. One of our dental affiliates, our dental consulting affiliates, will help through that discovery too, through the anonymous process survey. Well, when I take on a client, and even though Linda's fully retired, I'm mostly retired, I still have some clients, I won't do it without analytics. And the dentists understand that. They truly do. So having an HR company, having analytics, having a HIPAA OSHA specialist, but it becomes expensive. So it's wonderful to be able to get the nuts and bolts of practice management, and there is additional monies left for your soft tissue management specialist, for your HIPAA, OSHA, for your Linda, more specialists. You mentioned them. Who else?
Marketing,
Yes.
lease negotiations,
Yes.
a big one.
Yes.
So many dentists are paying way too much for their facility. And these people are specialists that we have demographics. You build a dental office wherever the hot spots in town are, but there's 9,000 other dentists on the block. Rural is actually on fire right now. Suburbia is on fire, but everybody goes to the city.
So my point here was that dentists understand specialties. They don't mind, and they understand it. And they don't mind paying for that. And how great to be able to go out and pay for all the different specialties to help your practice be exceptional and really knowledgeable and experts in areas. Once you have the nuts and bolts, got to have that. Otherwise,
you got to have that.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not a clinician, but it's like, building a full mouth case on top of, somebody who has periodontal disease, and worse yet, who has poor bone. So it's going to fall apart. So this is the nuts and bolts. But and I appreciate you, Julie, for wanting to know so much and being so curious about DIY. It's an honor. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really do love the product. I think it's tremendous. And I think we do need to make it, we need to remove as many barriers as possible for dental practices to get this kind of crucial information, because there is no time better than right now to start improving the systems, the team dynamics, the patient engagement, the foundational stuff that makes a dental practice successful. There's no time than right now. There's no better time than right now. I mean, you can spend the next 10 years having the last couple, you've already got the information, and then you have started to apply it the last couple of years. But what if you start applying it right now? You've got a whole 10 years, the whole next decade where you're benefiting from that. And I know that, Linda, you mentioned that one of the reasons why dental practices don't take on a coach is because they don't think their team are ready for it. They don't think they have got the right team members, as they say, the right people on the bus to drive these sort of changes. But let me tell you, it's been my experience. I'm not telling you guys, I'm telling all the people out there, it's been my experience, because I'm sure you've seen the same thing, that you can identify the right people, get them onto your bus. But if your bus isn't showing them, creating the experience for them to be able to shine, they will leave your bus and go to the next bus. So you need to get your bus right first.
That is, I love that. It's so true. You know, getting them in the right seat on the right bus. The bus has to be ready to make them grow, as we all did, you know, instead of squashing them down. And I'll tell you, the number one reason dental employees leave a practice is lack of appreciation.
In the whole country, Linda, that's the number one reason employees feel unappreciated. That is the number one reason.
Yeah.
It's not about money. People think it's,
Yeah, if you have clinical dental assistants who are just burning the candle on all ends to try to make up from the pandemic, and they're burning them out, and they're understaffed, and a lot of them say that it's people don't want to work. People want to work when they're appreciated and the tools they need to be their very best are provided, period.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. The Facebook chat forums that are, you know, for dental personnel, so many times I read people saying, I would just like a thank you at the end of the day for the efforts that I put forward today. The appreciation side doesn't have to be extraordinary. It certainly doesn't have to be expensive, but we need to verbalise how appreciative we are of the people around us that help make us successful. And DIY dental consulting is absolutely one of those things that can help dental practices be more successful. All of the website details are inside the show notes. But what's the best next step for a practice, or a dental practice manager, or a dental practice coach and consultant? What's the best next step for them to step into the DIY dental consulting world?
You mean other than to purchase it?
They can certainly purchase it, Julie, but one of the things that I was smiling when she was coming up with this question, and I didn't know the question was coming, yes, Nancy and I will be glad to come right over, spend a week in Australia, and we'll have 4 workshops, one in the major cities, and we will train the people who sign up. How's that for next year?
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Only if you'll take it on after we get it. So we'll get the top started, but you'll have to keep it going. How's that?
Right. And Julie, what I want to mention is that anybody who purchases the DIY because they're listening to this podcast, or anyone in Australia because of you, when they purchase it, there's a question that they'll need to answer. How did you hear about us? And on that drop down, they'll see Julie Parker. So they need to, you need to remind them just to click on your name. You don't even know that's there, Julie, but it is.
I love it. Thank you. I'll pop those in the show notes too. Mention my name for special treatment. I like that.
It's on the drop down. So they'll purchase it, and it says, how did you hear about us? It's a mandatory question so that we can know, you know, how people are hearing about us, and they'll click on your name.
Well, that's extraordinary. And to have you both come here on site and help dental coaches actually adopt this information, understand how to apply it, that is one of the most extraordinary offers, certainly that I've heard for a long time. So that's wonderful. I won't let you forget that one.
We'll have you get the group. We'll have you get the group together. Okay.
Sounds perfect. I like the thought of that.
And Linda, I had no idea I was going to Australia, but I'm all in.
Well, we talked about doing several girls' trip and going to south of France. I think Australia sounds even better.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So, any questions? Then Julie Parker knows the answer to that.
So if there are people out there that want to either get into the consulting and coaching space, or they're already in it and they love the sound of DIY dental consulting, please contact me and I'll add you to the list of people to remain in communication with around this. Now, Nancy and Linda, I would be so delighted if you could join me on subsequent episodes. I'd love to have a concentration on team dynamics, another one on leadership, systems, etc. Would you be happy to jump back on board with me soon?
Anytime, Julie, even in the middle of the night.
Well, in the middle of the night, I'm awake. Linda would have to set an alarm because I don't go to sleep usually till 1 or 2 a.m. But yes, it would be an honor. It would be a pleasure to go into each subject a little bit more in depth and to talk about it and possibly, answer people's questions if they have questions.
Tremendous. I might put out little, I'm having Nancy and Linda on again soon on BATS teams. And I'll put that in a Facebook forum and ask for all of their questions and start delivering them. I think that's a lovely approach to it. I wish you both a lovely rest of your evening, rest of the day for me, but it's for your evening. Have that wine if you'd like to, that you were mentioning before. And truly from the bottom of my heart, I thank you so very, very much for your beautiful attendance and wise words that you have shared with us all.
Oh, it was our pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems, and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. It is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.